Step right up. We just a little bit of news coming right up. Your on into you guys are doing well out there. And before you come in, I'm just going to have a moment and have a word for our sponsors. Thank you so much, all the loyal patrons, subscribers, as well as the followers on Periscope. If you're looking for great content creators on the subject of automobiles, current events, politics, culture, history, you name it, take a look at our patrons: Derek C. Williams, Killer Whale Channels, The Definition of Anarchy, Chrysler Imperial H, Let the Truth Be Told, Little Miss Goth, AZ Infidel, Cold War Jesus, and Anthony Scioli. And now, back to the news. Thank you guys so much again for tuning in to this segment of Black Spring with Autumn. And yes, I thank you guys so much for taking the time and investing your time here on Black Spring with Autumn. But we're going to get to the news, and I'll give you a little bit of a heads up. We have two prime kind of get out of the political right back. It just kind of a little bit of the screen here for just a second. But we're going to step right up. I mean, the markets apparently have responded to what we have, or what is being looked at as a candidate. And even we have a candidate for fast track on the, what I'm going to call here on the Black Spring channel, the mocktail. I think you guys can decipher the mocktail will be synonymous with a VC, if you know what I mean. And we'll take a couple liners from the Zero Hedge, as well as we're going to take a liner from our vetted source, the New American and the TNA on today. And I think that'll I mean, we'll probably take a look at some of the tweets and some of the rhetoric surrounding. I mean, there's a huge level of transparency here. There's got to be a raised level of discernment by now. If not, some people say the gift of discernment, or that's an actual gift. I'm not sure. I tend to say that those that maybe don't share that, maybe it's more of a willful blindness, or it's just easier because when you don't have to face up to facts, you can kind of you can still take cover. You can always take cover in your whatever makes you feel better, right? And so the truth doesn't make people feel better. Some people don't like having a mirror held up in front of their face, or it's just too hard. So with that said, I want to give a little bit of historical context, which I haven't done in a while, but this one I seem to rotate this one, or I loop this one kind of bit. And this one comes from On Tyranny. And this is from Timothy Snyder, which actually Timothy Snyder wrote this not too long ago, but I think he wrote it almost in response perhaps to even the 2016 election, if you will. So I find it's very apropos. I wonder what he thinks about his accounts, or has he changed anything, or does he have a follow up to his ideas and convictions on this particular book? So it was actually written in 2017. So we'll go with that to get things going here. Shout out to everybody or anybody that's in the stream, or if you're driving by in your vehicle with the window down and you're not sure if you're coming in. I appreciate you for ghosting the channel. So if you can just take a moment and help us with the AI or the check-in lytics, sometimes that helps us stick around or stay in the fight, if you will. So without further ado, or a don't, I will take you to On Tyranny. So this particular excerpt, of course, is coming out of On Tyranny. It's not very long. I will make it as painless as I can, and we'll get right to the news. But I will be offering this as the opening statement on today's stream. Hope you guys are doing well out there. And once again, shout out to the loyal patrons, the subscribers, and the followers. Thank you so much, followers over on Periscope. You guys are really getting it in. Shout out to you, Jackson Age 2000. Thank you so much for coming in. And shout out to Philip J. Turner. I really appreciate it. So we're going to handle this with a little bit lighter. We're going to try to keep the tone a little bit lighter and try to stay above the fray. There's a lot of fray out there, and there's going to be some fray out there for a while. So we'll try to keep our wits in range here, and try to stay on the up and up. Shout out to Anthony Scioli. Yikes. Thank you so much for all your support. Shout out to DJ Vision Barnett, and shout out to Ronnie Love 02. Thank you guys so much for coming in. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate those who might be ghosting the channel right now. If you're not sure if you're coming in, I think we're stepping right up to all these changes and transformations and even the uncertainties. So without further ado, we're going to move right on. So I'm going to start you out with something with a little bit of historical landscape or context. So hope it won't be too painful for you. Good morning to you, Steve Willis. Thank you so much for coming in. And so let's get going. All right. So we've done an excerpt from this before, but I'm taking you back to a bit of a founding fathers or a perspective here. This is from Timothy Snyder. According to this, Thomas Jefferson probably never said that, quote, eternal vigilance is the price of liberty, end quote. But other Americans of his era certainly did. When we think of this saying today, we imagine our own righteous vigilance directed outward against misguided and hostile others. We see ourselves as a city on the hill, the stronghold of democracy, looking out for threats that come from abroad. But the sense of the saying was entirely different. That human nature is such that American democracy must be defended from Americans who would exploit its freedoms to bring about its end. The American abolitionist Wendell Phillips did in fact say that, quote, an eternal vigilance is the price of liberty, end quote. He added that, quote, the manna of popular liberty must be gathered each day or it is rotten, end quote. The record of modern European democracy confirmed the wisdom of those words. The 20th century saw earnest attempts to extend the franchise and establish durable democracies. Yet the democracies that arose after the First World War and the Second often collapsed when a single party seized power in some combination of election and a coup d'etat. A party emboldened by a favorable election result or motivated by ideology or both might change the system from within. When fascists or Nazis or communists did well in elections in the 1930s or the 40s, what followed was some combination of spectacle, repression, and salami tactics, slicing off layers of opposition one by one. Most people were distracted, some were imprisoned, and others were outmatched. The hero of a David Lodge novel says that you don't know when you make love for the last time that you're making love for the first time. Voting is like that. Some of the Germans who voted for the Nazi Party in 1932 no doubt understood that this might be the last meaningful free election for some time, but most did not. Some of the Czechs and the Slovaks who voted for the Czechoslovak Communist Party in 1946 probably realized that they were voting for the end of democracy, but most assumed they would have another chance. No doubt the Russians who voted in 1990 did not think that this would be the last free and fair election in their country's history, which thus far it has been. Any election can be the last, or at least the last in the lifetime of the person casting the vote. The Nazis remained in power until they lost a world war in 1945, the Czechoslovak communists until their system collapsed in 1989, and the Russian oligarchy established after the 1990 elections continues to function and promotes a foreign policy designed to destroy democracy elsewhere. Now, here's your food for thought. Does the history of tyranny apply to the United States? Certainly, the early Americans who spoke of, quote, eternal vigilance, end quote, would have thought so. The logic of the system they devised was to mitigate the consequences of our real imperfections, not to celebrate our imaginary perfection. We certainly face, as did the ancient Greeks, the problem of oligarchy, even more threatening as globalization increases differences in wealth. The odd American idea that giving money to political campaigns is free speech means that the very rich have far more speech, and in effect far more voting power than other citizens. We believe that we have checks and balances, but have rarely faced a situation like the present, when the less popular of the two parties controls every level of power at the federal level as well as the majority of state houses. The party that exercises such control proposes few policies that are popular with the society at large, and several that are generally unpopular and thus must either fear democracy or weaken it. Another early American proverb held that, quote, where annual elections end, tyranny begins, end quote. Will we come to see one of our own elections, much as Russians see the elections of 1990, or Czechs the elections of 1946, or the German elections of 1932? This for now depends upon us. Much needs to be done to fix the gerrymandering system so that each citizen has one equal vote, and so that each vote can be simply counted by a fellow citizen. We need paper ballots because they cannot be tampered with remotely and can always be recounted. This sort of work can be done at the local and state levels. Any future elections will be a test of American traditions, so there's much to do in the meantime. Once again, thank you guys so much for tuning in. And that was your opening. Shout out to everybody in the stream. Thank you guys so much. So what I want to do is I want to get you right over to the news. But before I do that, I will say that I do think that there's a lot of parallels, and I think maybe even Snyder was a little bit before his time. I think maybe he undercut it just a little bit, but he wasn't. I don't think he was off. But I think there's some other. Thank you for that, DJ. Thank you. And I can see that. I certainly see the sentiment flying there. But that's why we're stepping right up today, taking our medicine. Okay. So with that said, I'm going to take you over to. We have a story coming up for you. We have a little bit, of course, there's some robust tension still out there. And I think it's going to remain. I think that's going to remain in play all the way up the the Pfizer story. And we'll go with that for now. Actually, I'll let you see. We'll have a look at. We'll go straight to the source actually on this, but then we'll also have a tweet that I can share with you. All right, shout out to everybody in the stream. So we have that story, but we also have Zero Hedge with the same type of. It's the same thing, and it's that we have a candidate. We have a candidate, but then we also have the rhetoric going. The rhetoric behind the cocktail, the mocktail. Who's going to get credit for it? And I'll just move you guys right on into that. And then we'll move on to a battle cry from our vetted source, the TNA, on they are requesting the GOP requested Barr probe the vote fraud. And to Graham, if the Dems get away with it, then the GOP is doomed. So we will see what that looks like. Shout out to everybody in the stream. Yikes. Ronnie Love 02. Yeah. We'll see how that works out. I don't know about that, but thank you. Okay, so I'm going to share the screen with you. Okay, so we'll do this one first. Okay. So what I have right away looks like this one says the Biden camp celebrates the Pfizer news and warns mask better option for fighting the CV, and Novavax gets fast tracked. Now that's coming from Tyler Durden of Zero Hedge. So according to this, nobody was more relieved to see the Biden-Harris ticket prevail last week than Dr. Anthony Fauci. Arguably, the first job that the Biden saved was Fauci's. So according to this, now the good doctor is joining the vaccine market pump fest by telling reporters that his favorite biotech company, Moderna, which he has been pumping virtually since its first vaccine-related press release, might exhibit similarly effective results to Pfizer's vaccine. So this is the top NIH official, Dr. Fauci. Moderna may have similar results as the Pfizer. So that's kind of where that's the context. Here you're getting back into big pharma. You see what happens. Are you guys seeing a pattern here? When they have success, you can have success. When the elites decide to call it, that's when the chains get a little bit looser. All right. So you can see some of the trends here if you follow the stock market or any of the rallying stock markets. According to this, meanwhile, for traders still turning over that, quote, 90% efficacy, end quote, figure, the fact that so many infections were in the placebo group is surely a good sign, the scientists said in their heads. According to CNBC, has offered some helpful points of comparison. So you can see you have tweets here. This is Forex Live. So they're showing, it's amazing that how all this information is just kind of conveniently rolled out right about now, right? So I'll keep going here. Okay, so you have more. Ben Carlson. He has a tweet. I wrote this yesterday. If the vaccine works and if we get another spending package to bridge the gap between now and people getting it, I think 2021, 2022 could see a massive boom in the economy and markets. Roaring 20s are on the table. So he's definitely this is the see this is to me there's a design here that's coming into place. I haven't even delved into the forum, the World Economic Forum, because I would love to see their reaction to what's going on in comparison to this. So I think that's probably going to be unfolding, but no less, I'll keep an eye on it for you. All right. So we're going to keep going here. So the update, adding to the positive CV mocktail news that has goose stocks Monday morning, the FDA has officially awarded Novavax, considered a second tier to the CV-19 mocktail competitor, a quote fast track designation, while the WSJ and other media are reporting that Pfizer's mocktail could get emergency approval and head into distribution by the end of the month. So your Novavax mocktail candidate gets FDA fast track designation. So there you go. Novavax. Okay. According to this, meanwhile, Dr. Scott Gottlieb, appearing on CNBC, said that the data appeared to be, quote, the light at the end of the tunnel, end quote, and a, quote, critical step, end quote, toward validating our technology. However, he added that we still have, quote, a hard stretch ahead of us, and that we must continue to keep the most vulnerable safe. Dr. Gottlieb added that the, quote, timeline for mass mocktails is late February/early March to start the process, since people need to receive multiple doses weeks apart before protective immunity develops. A mocktail could be, quote, broadly available, end quote, by the end of the second quarter, beginning of the third quarter. So you got some timelines there, huh? Though that timeline might shift by a few weeks in either direction, the timeline probably won't change much, assuming the FDA supplies the necessary approvals. Okay, now here it comes. Also, Americans should never forget that this vaccine news is, quote, particularly great news for, you guessed it, Black Americans, end quote. All right, I'll give you a little bit of the imagery on this. Squawk Box, all right, quote, it's particularly great news for Black Americans. Black Americans were disproportionately impacted by the hashtag CV because a lot of African Americans, due to lack of health care and health services, have preconditions, end quote, says billionaire investor Bob Jones. I love how he puts the preconditions on the end there. You know, you got to put the disparity first, and then you put the profile. But at least he included it in his rhetoric, right? And why is Bob or Robert Johnson credible? Because what, ladies and gentlemen, he's an elite. He's a billionaire. So this is, you gotta have that's credibility, right? That's credibility. Shout out to everybody in the stream. All right, so I'm going to keep going here. I'll bring my face back in ASAP. All right, all kidding aside, this morning's news isn't exactly unexpected. The trial data effectively confirmed that the mocktail process is on track, and that Pfizer still plans to apply for emergency approval by the end of the month. All right, so let me go ahead and give you guys a little bit of the imagery and the soundbite from our Black elite, billionaire investor Robert Johnson, on one of the mainstream hacks, CNBC.
Not all your businesses would benefit from a return to normalcy, but just as an American and as a human and as a business person, how are you feeling this morning about this news?
Well, Joe, this is great news, and it's particularly great news for Black Americans because, as you well know, Black Americans were disproportionately impacted by the COVID virus because a lot of African Americans. And so something vaccine, Joe. And on the macro level, the COVID vaccine is going to drive the economy. But for the same reason that Blacks were disproportionately affected by healthcare, lack of healthcare, they're disproportionately affected by lack of access to capital. So that should be a priority to go along with mobilizing the country for the vaccine. Suffer disproportionately. I think Black
Okay, so there you have it. So you had your full on, he said you should be, see, this is what I'm talking about. This is that this is why I say that the elites, this is we're dealing with class warfare, and everyone at the top is a spokesperson, whether in their minds they know what's best. You should be happy. They're telling you where your trust should be, where your loyalty should be, where your concern should be, when to cry, how to cry, who to mourn for, who not to mourn for. This is exactly what I'm talking about. And most people don't really pick it up, but words matter. Rhetoric matters. He will reach somebody, whether it's a low-hanging fruit or whatever you want to call it. He'll reach somebody. And maybe they weren't thinking at all. And some people he won't. But they chose him for a very specific ethos. They chose him for a very specific reason. And they figure, hey, they've got the richest guy in my flesh or background up there. I better listen to this guy. Or or it'll be some other celebrity. But they use these personalities to sell you whatever it is. Whatever it is. Am I discrediting everything he says? No, but I'm saying the elites co-sign what happens for the peasants. And even in the enclaves, in these other groups, they have people designated for the Black community. And there was your example. And this is not the first time that Johnson has come out and made a statement he's made statements about reparations to the tune of about $14 trillion. And then he spoke out about the economy and how he projected that this election would turn out over a year ago. And of course, the media hacks, the mockingbirds, they mocked him, they mocked others who praised the economy pre-pandemic economy. So there's that. So I think we'll leave that one there, and I'll take you on to the next level or the next nuance of this, because now you're getting back into, you got the rhetoric going, you got your UN agenda pieces going on there, you got your disparities, everything's about humanity, right? And for a better world, and making everybody have equal arms and legs, right? Okay. So we're going to move right on to our next clip. Thanks so much. All right, I'm going to minimize that one. We'll just have a word here from our sponsors, and we'll get right back. If you're looking for great content creators on the subject of automobiles, current events, politics, culture, history, you name it. Take a look at our patrons: Derek C. Williams, Killer Whale Channels, The Definition of Anarchy, Chrysler Imperial H, Let the Truth Be Told, Little Miss Goth, AZ Infidel, Cold War Jesus, and Anthony Scioli. And now, back to the news. Just one last check in on this status here, and this is going to come from the from Pfizer themselves, and then we'll move on to the current administration's response to this and the rhetoric that's surrounding that. So let me share that with you guys really quickly. So according to this is from Pfizer.com, their press release: Pfizer and BioNTech announced vaccine candidate against the CV-19 achieved success in the first interim analysis from phase 3 study. Right, this is released this morning at 6:45 a.m. The vaccine candidate was found to be more than 90% effective in preventing the CV in participants without evidence of the SARS-CoV-2 infection in the first interim efficacy analysis. Analysis evaluated 94 confirmed cases of the CV-19 in trial participants. The study enrolled 43,538 participants, with 42% having diverse backgrounds, no serious safety concerns, and have been observed. Safety and additional efficacy data will continue to be collected. A submission for emergency use authorization, the EUA, to the US FDA, planned for soon after the required safety milestone is achieved, which is currently expected to occur in the third week of November. And so the final point here is that the clinical trial to continue through the final analysis at 164 confirmed cases in order to collect further data and characterize the mocktail candidate's performance against other study endpoints. Okay, so then you can do, you can take a gander at the full one. I'm not going to go into the full one, the full release, which it looks like it features multimedia, but you can see the tags or the tickers for the S&P. You can see that New York and Mance, Germany, Business Wire, Pfizer Inc., the New York Stock Exchange, NYSE, PFE, BioNTech, SE, NASDAQ, BNTX today announced their mRNA-based mocktail candidate. So you guys can break that down. But here's a final statement. I'm not going to give the whole thing here, but they're patting themselves on the back and doing what they do here. Quote, "Today is a great day for science and humanity. The first set of results from our phase 3 CV-19 mocktail trial provides the initial evidence of our mocktail's ability to prevent CV-19, end quote," said Dr. Alberta Burla, as the Pfizer chairman and CEO. So you can read more about the milestone, and I don't know how you guys feel about this kind of a bit, but I'm going to put this here for you. All right. So there you have that. So there you've got your release and the docs on what's happening there. But then I want to show you one other item, and then we'll go to what's happening with the GOP and what the demands are right now. Okay. So this is a Twitter account here of Mike Pence. It says, "Huge news thanks to the public-private partnerships forged by President real Donald Trump and at Pfizer announced its CV mocktail trial is effective, preventing infection in 90% of its volunteers." Okay, so then of course, Here it comes. Here comes the drizzle, the dripping rhetoric here. So they're replying to Pence and Trump and Pfizer fact check. You see how you got these fact checkers coming in right to the rescue. I'm not familiar with Jeff Tiedrick, which says the Pfizer was not part of Operation Warp Speed. Pfizer took no government money. Trump has nothing to do with this. Neither do you. Trump still lost. You did too. Pack your bags. Get out of Kamala Harris's house. Isn't that cute? They have a picture of them throwing a tomato. Oh, and then of course, so you got your rally. You know, they're going to rally back and forth about whose administration this was done under. And to that point, it appears that the Biden-Harris deal they're moving full speed ahead. And the cabinet talks are in. It's just, this is straddling the fence, pretty heavy. So there's your tweet if you're into tweeting. And I'm going to stop the share on that one. You guys can look that one up. But I will tell you what the demands are, the battle cry from the GOP. And of all people, it looks like Lindsey Graham might be on the front lines of this one. So we're going to go to that. Shout out to everybody in the stream. Let's see. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. So yes, and once again, this is going to come from our vetted source, the TNA, the New American, and the JBS, our friends at the JBS. So I'll be taking you right over to that, and that will be our final story today. Hope you guys are well. Okay. All right, so I'm going to bring you the liner. Okay. Don't have audio on this one, but okay. So according to this is from our vetted source, the New American, the TNA, from our friends at the John Birch Society. Okay, so of course you know that our friends, we have the GOP to probe the vote fraud. Graham, if Dems get away with it, the GOP is doomed. All right, so that is your liner from our friends at the TNA. All right, with that said, all right, so we'll keep going here. Sorry for the delays here. Okay, so according to this, more than 3 dozen GOP congressmen have asked U.S. Attorney General Bill Barr to prove allegations of voter fraud in key swing states. The leftist media says tipped Tuesday's election to, quote, President-elect Biden. The right to vote is, quote, sacred, end quote, Friday's letter says, and that doesn't just mean having access to a voting booth. It means one's vote must remain undiluted by vote fraud. Meanwhile, echoing Representative Matt Gaetz' comments, Republican Senator Lindsey Graham told Fox's Maria Bartiromo yesterday that if the GOP doesn't fight the vote fraud and permits the election mischief to stand, the party will never win an election again. Graham's office received a sworn affidavit from a postal worker in Pennsylvania who says he witnessed the fraud. the letter, noting that Barr's Justice Department is responsible for the integrity of federal elections. The 39 Republicans wrote that Americans, quote, must have the utmost confidence that the outcome of the presidential election is legitimate, end quote. But they cannot now, the letter said, because of what happened in the days after November 3rd. Quote, with widespread reports of irregularities, particularly in the vote counting process, it is time for you to use the resources of the department to ensure that the process is conducted in a manner that is fully consistent with law and federal law, with state law and federal law. And it is important that the process be completed transparent so that the American people will feel confidence, full confidence in the result. The Justice Department's Civil Rights Division voting section's responsibility is to ensure that the right to vote is sacred. This not only means access to the ballot box, but it also means ensuring that no one's vote is devalued by any means of voter fraud. The congressman noted that the U.S. Marshals can ensure that judicial orders are obeyed and asked Barr what is he, quote, doing to ensure the integrity of the voting and counting process right now, end quote. They ask him to, quote, commit to using all the resources at your disposal to ensure that only legal votes are counted or being counted and being counted in a fully transparent manner, end quote. Quote, the American people need to have confidence that the outcome of this election is legitimate. Signer Jim Banks of Indiana tweeted, I've joined 38 of my colleagues in writing a letter to AG Bill Barr requesting he investigate claims of voter fraud and make sure only legal votes are counted in this election. The American people need to have confidence that the outcome of this election is legitimate. Again, now that comes from Representative Jim Banks. I'm sure you guys can find him, of course, on your local Twitter accounts. Well, not local Twitter accounts, but just find it within your own Twitter engagements. So yes, so there you have a little bit of the robust contention out there. I don't think it's actually going to go away. And by the way, those are our friends. That segment was brought to you of our show was brought to you by our good friends at the John Birch Society. Less government, more responsibility, and with God's help, a better world. And for over 60 years, the John Birch Society has been the force that protects and restores American liberty and independence. Our local grassroots activism is like no other, standing at the forefront of the battle to restore constitutional freedoms. We can secure a future with less government and more responsibility. And keep in mind, the JBS does not endorse any political party or candidate. Rather, it focuses on the education, training, and development of the American voters. So I thank you guys once again for tuning in to this 11th hour. Shout out. Might as well. Stream back back. Okay. All right. So what I'm going to do is, I don't think I have anything for you right now on the what litigations begin today. Not specifically. So saying that the GOP led states back the legal drive to challenge. So there's the political there's the political, dog and pony show. Because I think over the weekend I may have showed you that there were protests happening in areas, and we'll continue to see those. December 14th is going to be a very pivotal and viable date because of the vote, and we'll see what happens. I think if I'm not mistaken, there may even be rallies planned. I want to confirm that for those battleground states. It's really wonky. It almost seems like there is still some level of rallying going on, even though this situation is bizarre. So I think the challenging of the battle, the challenging on the battleground states, I think there seems to be some level of, I don't know, I'm hearing, I can't confirm it, that there's some rallying or plans for those states. So for the states that are in question. So we'll see. But the popcorn and all these things together, which is it's really not that much different than what's happened over the weekend or whatnot from what we saw earlier over the weekend. So once again, I appreciate you guys so much for coming in. And I said, if I have anything else for you, I'll bring it. I'll bring it as soon as I can. But right now, this is about it. And I can't really confirm any other states or, of course, any other results. I did have one other thing. I did have one other charge, if you will. And it was actually coming out of Georgia. Let's see. Maybe you guys want to dig into this just for a second here. Hope you guys are doing well. Yeah, so this is so there's still, these rallies are still going on, even though we're what, how many days are we beyond the election right now? Like 6 days or something. Yeah. We're on earth right now. And certainly there's some miles to go. But I really appreciate you guys so much for coming. Analytics. If you're looking for great content creators on the subject of automobiles, current events, politics, culture, history, you name it, take a look at our patrons: Derek C. Williams, Killer Whale Channels, The Definition of Anarchy, Chrysler Imperial H, Let the Truth Be Told, Little Miss Goth, AZ Infidel, Cold War Jesus, and Anthony Scioli. And now, back to the news. And you could, and